Don't cry when you miss, kid. A male soldier smirked as Eliza was selected to train with the sniper team. She didn't react, just lowered her head and gripped her M24 rifle tighter. 2 hours later, when General Logan's convoy was ambushed, no one could make the shot from 900 yards. A dry thwap echoed from the mountaintop. The bullet cut through the wind. The enemy commander's scope shattered into pieces. "Who trained her?" the officer whispered. "Meet Eliza Shaw. 25 years old, barely 5'4", with calloused hands and brown hair always pulled back in a regulation bun so tight it gave her headaches. She was a logistics soldier stationed at Tactical Outpost number 87, perched high in the unforgiving Cadron Plateau, near the contested border where the wind never stopped howling. The outpost was a collection of prefab buildings and reinforced bunkers, constantly battered by mountain storms and the occasional mortar round from enemy positions across the valley. Despite having attended the prestigious Blackwater Sniper Academy, she'd been eliminated in the final round for excessive hand tremors during the emergency stress evaluation. The official report made it sound clinical, professional. It didn't mention how Sergeant Reynolds had deliberately slammed his clipboard on her shooting table just as she squeezed the trigger. Nobody believed in her after that. In the barracks, she performed the unglamorous support duties that kept the real soldiers functioning, loading ammunition belts until her fingers bled, cleaning rifles with obsessive precision, managing supply inventories in the freezing storage bunkers, scrubbing mud and blood from combat gear that came back from patrol. The male soldiers treated her like furniture, useful but invisible. Keep the guns clean so the real shooters can use them. Shaw. Eliza's only good at cleaning, not shooting. Good thing, too. We'd all be dead if we depended on her. Their laughter echoed through the mess hall every night, bouncing off concrete walls like ricocheting bullets. She ate her meals in silence, mechanically chewing MREs while their jokes carved deeper wounds than any enemy fire ever could. But she never fought back, never defended herself, just absorbed their cruelty like body armor absorbs shrapnel. One gray morning, during mandatory sniper training exercises, she was reluctantly added to the practice roster. Not because anyone wanted her there, but because they needed bodies to fill the minimum training requirement. Staff Sergeant Martinez, a bear of a man with arms like tree trunks and a mustache that hadn't been trimmed since the Clinton administration, looked her up and down with obvious disgust. "Don't cry when you miss, kid." He spit tobacco juice into the dirt near her boots. "This ain't cleaning duty." The other soldiers chuckled, already anticipating her failure. She didn't answer, didn't rise to the bait, didn't give them the reaction they wanted. Instead, she simply lowered her head with mechanical precision, checked her borrowed M24 rifle with the methodical care of a surgeon preparing for brain surgery, adjusted the scope's focus ring, calculated wind speed using techniques most of them had never learned, aimed with the steady concentration of someone who had nothing left to lose. Not a single word escaped her lips. The mockery would end today. Dawn broke gray and violent over the Cadron Plateau. General Logan's armored convoy rolled out at 0600 hours, 6 vehicles carrying the commanding officer and his tactical assessment team deep into the disputed territory. The mission was routine: inspect forward observation posts and evaluate defensive positions along the contested valley floor. Intelligence reports had cleared the route. Satellite imagery showed no enemy movement. The recon drones had swept the area twice. According to every piece of data they had, the path was secure. Every piece of data was wrong. The convoy was 3 miles into hostile territory when the first shots rang out. Enemy forces had established a perfect killing field, with their primary sniper positioned on Eagle's Peak, a jagged rock formation that provided clear sight lines across the entire valley floor. 900 yards of empty air separated the enemy marksman from General Logan's trapped convoy. It might as well have been 900 miles. The ambush was textbook perfect. Communications were immediately jammed by sophisticated electronic warfare equipment. GPS signals scrambled. Radio frequencies flooded with white noise that made coordination impossible. The quick response team was 40 minutes out through mountain roads that turned to mud in the best conditions. Today, with enemy artillery targeting the main supply route, they might never arrive at all. Ground reconnaissance couldn't identify the sniper's exact position due to the brutal terrain. The rocky outcroppings created dozens of potential hiding spots. Swirling winds carried dust clouds that shifted like living things, obscuring visibility every few minutes. The enemy shooter had chosen his position with deadly expertise. Back at the outpost, the field commander desperately called for immediate sniper support. His voice cracked with barely controlled panic as reports flooded in from the trapped convoy. General Logan is pinned down behind his vehicle. We're taking accurate fire from an elevated position. Request immediate counter-sniper operations. But there were no qualified marksmen available. Every certified sniper had been deployed to the Eastern Front 72 hours earlier to counter a major enemy offensive. The outpost was operating with a skeleton crew of support personnel and fresh recruits who couldn't hit a barn from inside it. Eliza Shaw wasn't even considered for weapons authorization. After her academy failure, she'd been officially removed from the combat arms list and relegated to permanent logistics duty. Her security clearance didn't include access to precision weapons. But she was monitoring the thermal observation equipment when she spotted something that made her blood run cold. A single heat signature on the western plateau, precisely positioned at the optimal firing angle. The enemy sniper had perfect elevation, clear sight lines, and protection from return fire. It was a killing position that could eliminate the entire convoy, one vehicle at a time. She keyed her radio and requested permission to engage from Observation Post 9. Negative, Shaw. Your logistics, not authorized for combat operations. The command bunker erupted in arguments and desperate planning sessions. Officers shouted over each other, proposing strategies they didn't have the resources to execute. Every second of debate meant more danger for General Logan. Eliza stood in the corner, watching her superiors struggle with an impossible situation. She knew exactly where the enemy was. She knew exactly what shot needed to be made. And she knew that in about 10 minutes, General Logan would be dead unless someone acted. She made the hardest decision of her life. Without permission, without backup, without official authorization, she grabbed her personal M24 rifle and slipped out of the command bunker. The mountain air hit her face like a slap as she climbed the treacherous path to Hill Observation Post number 9. Her hands shook from cold and adrenaline. Her eyes watered in the brutal wind, but her mind was crystal clear. She whispered her calculations into the howling air. Western wind, 15 knots. Thermal inversion at layer 2. Elevation adjustment, 2.3 degrees. Range, 900 yards exactly. One shot, one chance. One bullet to save a general's life. The sound that changed everything was barely audible above the mountain wind. A dry, sharp thwap. The distinctive crack of a high-velocity bullet cutting through thin air at over 2,000 feet per second. Down in the valley, General Logan's convoy had been preparing for a desperate breakout attempt. The armored vehicles were repositioning for a fighting retreat when something extraordinary happened. The enemy sniper, who had been methodically picking apart their defensive positions for the past 20 minutes, suddenly went silent. His rifle clattered down the rocky slope like scrap metal. His body crumpled behind the boulder that had provided perfect concealment. The shattered remains of his scope caught the afternoon sunlight, creating tiny rainbows in the mountain air. The ambush was over in an instant. Back at Tactical Outpost 87, the command bunker exploded into chaos. Hostile sniper eliminated. How the hell did that happen? No signal from any of our units. Check all authorized firing positions immediately. But that was the problem. There were no authorized firing positions. Every qualified marksman was supposed to be 300 miles away on the Eastern Front, dealing with what command had deemed a higher priority threat. Lieutenant Morrison, barely 22 years old and 6 weeks out of officer training, was frantically cycling through radio frequencies when he caught a faint transmission on the auxiliary emergency channel. The voice was calm, professional, and completely unexpected. Command, this is Specialist Shaw at Observation Post 9 Golf. Enemy sniper neutralized. Threat eliminated. General Logan's convoy is clear to proceed. The bunker went dead silent. Captain Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran who had seen combat on 4 continents, stared at the radio with his mouth hanging open. Shaw? He looked around the room. Eliza Shaw? The logistics specialist? Lieutenant Morrison nodded slowly. That's what she said, sir. She's not even qualified to carry a combat weapon, someone whispered. Sergeant First Class Williams, the oldest soldier in the unit, cleared his throat. His voice was quiet but carried the weight of terrible knowledge. She used to be a student of Master Sergeant Carter. The name hit the room like a physical force. Carter, the legendary marksman who had trained Navy SEALs, Marine Scout snipers, and Army Rangers. The man who held the record for the longest confirmed kill in military history. The instructor who was so selective that he had only accepted 3 students in his entire 30-year career. Carter only trained elite operators, Captain Rodriguez said slowly. Special Forces guys, Tier 1 assets. And Eliza Shaw, Williams added. She was his final student before he retired. Spent 2 years under his personal instruction. Word was she came within 50 yards of breaking his 1,100-yard record. The pieces began falling into place like a sniper's perfect shot. When General Logan returned to base 3 hours later, his first action was to request the complete ballistics analysis of the engagement. The trajectory data told a story that most soldiers couldn't even comprehend. The bullet had traveled 900 yards through constantly shifting wind conditions. It had compensated for 2 separate thermal layers moving in opposite directions. The shot had utilized an advanced technique called vortex sliding, a method so complex that fewer than a dozen snipers worldwide had ever successfully employed it in combat. The mathematical precision required was staggering. Wind speed calculations, atmospheric pressure adjustments, target movement prediction, and thermal drift compensation, all computed in seconds under extreme stress. General Logan studied the data with the fascination of someone who had just witnessed the impossible. He turned to his staff with steel in his voice. We evaluate soldiers based on paperwork and politics while ignoring the lethal talent standing right in front of us. His expression darkened. I want to know exactly how Specialist Shaw ended up cleaning rifles instead of carrying them. I want names, I want dates, and I want explanations. The investigation that followed revealed a story of systemic bias, deliberate sabotage, and institutional failure. Eliza Shaw hadn't failed her final sniper qualification because she lacked skill. She had been deliberately sabotaged by jealous classmates who couldn't accept that a woman had outperformed them in every measurable category. During her final stress test, Corporal Jenkins had accidentally bumped her shooting table at the critical moment. The instructor, Staff Sergeant Reynolds, had used her momentary hand tremor as justification to eliminate her from the program. She was too good, Williams finally admitted to the investigating officer. The boys felt threatened. They made sure she didn't make the cut. General Logan's response was swift and merciless. We just lost 2 years of combat effectiveness because of petty jealousy and institutional sexism. That ends today. The evening after Eliza's impossible shot, Tactical Outpost 87 became a completely different place. The story spread through the base like wildfire, but it wasn't just about marksmanship. It was about courage, competence, and the terrible cost of prejudice. Soldiers who had dismissed her for months now understood they had been living alongside a warrior who could have saved their lives a dozen times over. The transformation started immediately. Staff Sergeant Martinez, the man who had sneered, "Don't cry when you miss, kid," was the first to approach her after the evening briefing. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by something resembling humility. "Shaw," he said, his voice rough with embarrassment, "I owe you more than an apology. I owe you my life." She looked up from cleaning her rifle, the same M24 that had eliminated a threat from 900 yards. "You don't owe me anything, Martinez." "Yes, I do." He sat heavily on the bench across from her. "I judge you based on rumors and my own stupid assumptions. I let my ego blind me to what you really were." Other soldiers gathered around, drawn by the unprecedented sight of Martinez admitting he was wrong about anything. "We all did," Corporal Jensen admitted. The young soldier had been one of the loudest voices mocking her cleaning duties. "We were so busy protecting our fragile egos that we almost got General Logan killed." Sergeant Williams stepped forward, his weathered face serious. "Shaw, I've been military for 23 years, served in Iraq, Afghanistan, and places that don't officially exist. I've seen talented soldiers destroyed by politics and prejudice. You prove that skill doesn't give a damn about anyone's expectations." The change wasn't just individual, it was institutional. Within a week, General Logan had restructured the entire evaluation system. Performance metrics replaced subjective assessments. Blind testing eliminated bias. The Old Boys Club, that had dominated military culture for generations, began crumbling under the weight of measurable results. Women throughout the base started speaking up about their own experiences. Combat engineers revealed how their tactical suggestions had been ignored until male colleagues repeated them. Communications specialists shared stories of being excluded from critical planning sessions. Mechanics described years of having their expertise questioned simply because they didn't fit the traditional image of a soldier. General Logan's response was decisive. Every soldier will be evaluated solely on demonstrated capability. Personal bias will result in immediate disciplinary action and potential court-martial. The results were immediate and dramatic. 3 more women qualified for advanced marksman training within the month. 2 earned places in the elite reconnaissance unit. The base's overall performance ratings improved by 30% in 6 weeks. The story of the 900-yard miracle became legendary throughout the military, but its real impact was in thousands of small moments where capable people finally got the chances they deserved. They once said women couldn't be snipers, but Eliza Shaw saved a general's life not with recognition or approval, but with deadly precision when it mattered most. The world isn't lacking talented people. It's lacking leaders brave enough to see past their own prejudices and give those people the opportunities they've earned. If you've ever been dismissed because you don't fit someone else's narrow definition of capability, remember this: one perfect shot at the right moment can shatter every assumption, not just about you, but about everyone like you who's been waiting for their chance. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the rifle. It's refusing to accept the limitations others try to impose on your potential.